All right, guys, ranting coming. Kids these days. There's talk of Roblox everywhere. Back in my day, we played with real blocks. Kids these days are obsessed with poop emojis and something about a skibbity toilet. I swear I never want to hear the Baby Shark song again. They're obsessed with drip and Riz, and they won't get off those dang iPads. Man, kids these days, they're eating Tide Pods and doing TikTok dances and ridiculous challenges. They're putting everything online. What's the deal with these pronouns? They say they go to parties, but they're kind of just standing there in a trance, vibing. Back in my day, we knew how to party. And you know what? They won't get off their phones. You know, kids these days, they talk with strangers in AOL chat rooms, giving out their age, sex, and location. They meet up with random internet people. They get into strangers' cars based on an app. They're trying to eat whole spoons of cinnamon, and they're watching some banana yell about peanut butter jelly time on their computer. And you know what? They also won't get off their phones. They keep texting in class. Because, you know, kids these days, they're eating Pop Rocks and drinking Coca-Cola, and they wonder why their tummy hurts. They're car surfing. They're grabbing onto the roof of their car and they're surfing. They're playing grunge music on their cassette players, and they're not showering. There's some reason talking about computer people dying from dysentery on the Oregon Trail. They're staying up too late at arcades. They're doing prank calls at midnight. They won't stop watching TV. Because, you know, kids these days, they're listening to rock and roll and eating funny brownies, if you know what I mean. They're hitchhiking all over the country, again with getting in strangers' cars. This is a recurring theme. They're streaking with Nixon masks, and why do we keep talking about white rabbits and a hotel in California, and they won't stop watching TV? You know what? Kids these days, they're skipping Sunday night church to watch Elvis on Ed Sullivan. They're never going to come to anything. They're doing prank calls about ice boxes still running and to let Prince Albert out of the can. And you know what? They're swallowing live goldfish too, and they're always listening to the radio. They're never going to come of anything. Listen, I hope I got most of all of you in the sanctuary with that one. The point is, I want to emphasize that every single generation has done some really dumb stuff. They've done ridiculous and wild things, or maybe they're just plain weird. But some of the things were fine. Don't swallow like goldfish. But some of the things were fine. It just felt new or different to our parents and grandparents. New things can freak people out. So anyways, what does the text have to say about doing weird things and their impact on the community? To provide a little context here, the writer of this letter is doing some social and religious commentary, kind of like I just did. There was a group running around amidst the early church called the Gnostics, and a quick, dirty, and unnuanced view of the Gnostics. They thought the flesh was evil, things you did evil, try to avoid food, avoid sex, avoid marriage, and that not only should they do it, but you should do it too. Because they're better than everyone, and you should be too. In every generation, there will always be people that try to be stricter than God. For them, depriving themselves of something makes them feel holier than others in their eyes. Deprivation can be a good way to get closer to God, but you don't have to insist on everyone else doing it. I mean, fasting is all well and good, but for the health and safety of everyone around me, I should not be fasting. See, in every generation, there will be those that act as deceitful spirits and teach demonic things. Their hypocrisy goes far and wide. Often these adults in power control major corporations that are polluting the rivers. Or maybe they're profiting off of horrible labor practices, all while telling others to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Sometimes these are the adult politicians who throw minorities under the bus or call people DEI hires because it's more politically convenient to be racist. It's extremely jarring to watch someone espouse that the existence of my sexual orientation caused insert national disaster here, while constantly voting to slash funding to prevent suffering from those with those national disasters. Y'all, I've worked with a lot of kids doing summer camps for the past 6 years, but they've never done anything that led to an international crisis or the continuing decline of arable land. Don't get me wrong, they've done some dumb stuff. Oh, this is fun. I've seen a kid go to the medic tent every day of the week for something uniquely stupid each time, including an attempt to wrestle wildlife and start a cactus fight. Fun fact, nobody wins in a cactus fight, and I lost the most. I was the medic. But I saw those same kids show care and compassion to each other. They grew up into counselors, making a huge impact in other kids' lives right after COVID. They put in unthinkable amounts of work to make sure we would have a safe camp. I heard them stand up to bullies and do the right thing by telling me when the adults weren't masking like they were supposed to. They ask deep questions and expect better answers than most adults can give them. They've learned to ask why someone is hungry instead of just asking how to feed them. And never once did they question my ability due to my gender or short hair. Which leads us to the next part of the text. Paul sees the potential in Timothy. Instead of writing Timothy off and saying he was too young to do anything, Paul took the time to write Timothy a letter with loving advice. See, Paul had also done dumb things in his youth, but also as an adult. Paul persecuted Christians and murdered them for not believing like him, back before he transitioned from Saul to Paul. Paul knew not to write people off solely based on the things they had done previously, but to engage with others based on the continuing quality and content of their character. Paul tells Timothy that working out's good, but don't get hooked on the fitness influencers. He says stay away from that one weird trick you'll find on the internet to keep your teeth white forever or something. Paul doesn't want Timothy to get caught up with snake oil salesmen. Paul invests in Timothy. He tells him to keep his eyes on the prize without neglecting his body. Paul doesn't do that in spite of Timothy's age because he was some savant, but because of it. Paul sees who Timothy is now and who he could become. I heard a lot of really cool stuff in seminary. It's nice when you get to go to school for your special interest, but the most powerful thing I heard was about children's ministry. I think of it frequently. A beloved professor said, no. Children aren't the future of the church. If you focus on that, you've focused on the wrong thing entirely. Children are the now of the church. How can we expect them to do the work of the church if we don't treat them as full members now? Sounds an awful lot like don't let anyone despise your youth. Now everyone's different. Claire and Ruby are both Gen Alpha, but they're different people. None of us are a monolith. Not every boomer ate weird brownies, and not every millennial likes questionable amounts of mimosas and avocado toast. But sometimes we can speak in broad strokes. Gen Alpha is our youngest generation currently. They were born between 2010 and 2024. They're the most diverse generation on record. Overall, kindness to each other is very important to them. A young relative of mine formed up a gang of girls, as she called them, that went around not bullying kids, but finding the ones crying on the playground and seeing why they were crying. Apparently, Gen Alpha has some social workers in their blood. They are hyper-connected to each other online, but they've had to social distance for much of their socialization. They've been adept at technology from a young age, which presents challenges and benefits. They aren't going to have all permanent brain rot from being online because their world is online. They do have reduced attention spans, but they also don't have time to wait on long-winded adults to save the world, as income inequality and climate change are upon them now. And you know what? They are part of the now of the church. They are valued church members with ideas and dreams and more than enough love to share. The thing is, we are at our best when we can cross generational lines and play off each other's strengths. When we seek to understand, we can truly change the world. The divine right of kings did not fall overnight with one generation. Institutionalized segregation took decades to dismantle and is still underway. The civil rights and second-wave feminist movements in the 50s, 60s, and 70s depended on all the generations. Couldn't have happened without the lost generation, greatest generation, silent generation, or the boomers. Swallowing live goldfish and funky brownies aside, they teamed up for something incredible. Boomers and Xers, you teamed up and told aides to have a seat. You erased a stigma that had a chokehold on our community for entirely too long. I benefit as a queer millennial in that AIDS is not the first thing I think of when I think of my community. And it's not really the first thing others think of either. Xers, you were the first generation to be fully integrated in schools. You pioneered the internet that we use today. Your flexibility and ability to translate has helped keep others generations together in coalitions. I think you turned out okay, car surfing and pop rocks and all. Boomers, Xers, millennials said enough is enough and tipped the scale on marriage equality. We healed a hole in the ozone layer with long years of activism for better regulation on CFCs. Gen X and millennials and Gen Z are bringing back unions. The SAG-AFTRA strike was unthinkable a decade ago, not on this scale. Unions are spreading again as people learn their worth and to set boundaries at work. Boundaries are a buzzword with millennials. Frankly, I think sometimes it's our whole personality. And y'all, Gen Z, oh my goodness. Gen Z is on fire because they are sick of seeing this planet heating up and literally on fire. They are sick of institutionalized violence and excuses for people suffering. They are downstairs every Wednesday night plotting how they're going to change the world with an energy I don't think I have ever seen. Gen Z and a handful of millennials want to shut down a war like boomers did in Vietnam. So how do we go about being in community with our youngest generations? Do we let them alone because it's the end of the world as we know it? Or do we engage with them? I'm not saying we can sit on our hands and do nothing, pretend everything's fine, and let the kids go fix it. It's not fine, obviously. We're humans, and humans can be terrible no matter what generation you're from. Not every boomer thought desegregation was a good idea. Not every millennial is all about gay rights. But we can empower the alpha and the zoomers and let them know about God's love and wisdom in concrete ways. We can teach them their value by sitting and listening to them, instead of giving up on the future of humanity because you cannot understand why in the world Gen Alpha has a thing about digital toilets. We can empower our kids to be great people with concrete tools and skills and values in the real world. We can bemoan who they are, or we can work alongside them and form relationship. Maybe sometimes youth do forget that they did not fall out of a coconut tree, and instead from the context of everyone else here. But sometimes we forget youth have less context than we do, and that can be an awesome thing, as it can transform the ways we think and give us creative ways around dead ends. Youth can make an impact as strong as a coconut falling on your head. Y'all, the kids are all right, and sometimes adults can be too. Amen.